Sometimes I wonder, if I could ever travel back in time, what would I do differently as a junior web developer? Could I have done better with the industry knowledge I have now? Well, the answer's a hell yes. I never had a mentor to guide me. If I had, these are the things they probably would have said to me when I spent those first 3 to 6 months learning to code in my dingy hobbit-like existence cocooned away from the world. Well, now I do. After much thought, I've created a guide that I would happily hand to the basement dweller version of me 3 to 4 years ago. So with that in mind, let's travel back in time and drop some knowledge bombs on the old version of me. If you're new to this channel, like and subscribe. So the pleb version of me probably would have been at the stage of learning where he would just be glazing over and rushing topics, not fully understanding the fundamentals and jumping into haphazardly building websites responsibly. To be using CSS frameworks to compensate for a lack of fundamental knowledge and copy and pasting other people's code from the web, whilst at the same time being glued to full video tutorials but not coding along or building something after. It was a grim situation, and yeah, I was that guy. If that sounds familiar, don't be the old noob me. Be the time traveler version of yourself that's made it and come back to teach you the ways of the web from the future. Now, becoming a front-end web developer, when you break it down, is actually quite simple. There's 3 core things you need to understand to get started: the right tools, understanding the fundamentals of web development, and using the right resources so you don't waste your time. Now let's jump into the tools. There's 2 core things you'll need: a good development browser and a code editor or IDE. In terms of browsers, I've already done a video going through which browser I believe is the best. Spoiler alert, it's Brave. That's my pro future recommendation to you all. Go check it out after this video to learn why I chose Brave. Now in the browser, we'll mostly be looking to use the dev tools during learning, specifically the element inspector to look at the HTML and the CSS, the console, the network resource panel, and the debugger. In terms of a code editor or IDE, my personal recommendation for power, adoption, and overwhelming community trust is Visual Studio Code, or VS Code. It's free, and unlike everything else on this minus WebStorm, it blows them out of the water for power. It even has a great extension ecosystem. Now past me used Atom, which was great at the time, but it's just a text editor and not an IDE like WebStorm or VS Code. Now don't be past noob me, use VS Code. Now those are all the tools you need. Let's go take a look at the fundamentals you'll need to learn. Now if you're learning front-end web, almost none of this will mean anything to you, but you gotta know the fundamentals: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I can't stress enough the need to avoid cutting corners. Embrace the pain, embrace the difficult challenges, embrace being completely lost, and keep pushing through anyway. Being out of your comfort zone is when you really start to get your head around web development. If we look at HTML, we need to know the general HTML page structure. Obviously, it's super important. Basic HTML elements is a must to learn, like divs, spans, unordered lists, and adding element attributes like classes, IDs, etc. If we look at HTML, we need to know the general HTML page structure. We need to be very familiar with the basics. So when I say basic HTML elements, the things like divs, spans, unordered lists, and being able to add element attributes like classes and IDs. You've got to be able to link to other documents and resources like CSS style sheets and JavaScript files. Now if we look at HTML, we need to know the general HTML page structure and be familiar with some of the HTML elements like divs, spans, unordered lists, and being able to add element attributes like classes and IDs, etc. We also have to be able to link to other documents and resources like CSS style sheets and JavaScript files. These are super important to understand at an early level. Now, semantic HTML is super important for writing SEO friendly and accessible web pages. Screen readers love HTML elements that are written semantically that better describe their purposes. Coincidentally, so do search engines like Google. Now the same goes for ARIA HTML attributes that we layer on top of semantic HTML to provide screen readers a fighting chance to inform users with sight impairments what's in front of them. Now as much as I love using desktop, the majority of the web is viewed on mobile. Every website that is mobile facing has to be built mobile first without question. Everything you build has to be mobile first, and it's a term you need to burn in along with all of the other basic terms that I've mentioned here in this list. Now let's get into the CSS fundamentals. This is a list of CSS core tenets I'd start with if a noob past me had a second chance. I'd start off with a very basic principle of playing around with styling simple elements by class or ID. It's usually the first place most people start, or just styling native elements without a class or ID. Now, pseudo styling with the before, after, end selectors, checkboxes, checked, pseudo attributes, all those things that you get in forms, you need to know that. And it's something that I would start to learn very early on. You can also style HTML attributes in general. It's a great place to start to develop a deeper understanding of the relationship between HTML and CSS. And the third one on this list is very important: the box model concept. And the third one on this list is the box model concept. Understanding how an element spacing works is crucial, from the position, border, margin, padding, and then the core size of the element. It's how web pages are laid out basically. It's how elements interact with each other. It's a very important model. It's one that I actually didn't learn fully until I got into my second job. Don't make the same mistake. Learn this early on, though it sounds confusing at first. Media queries is a big core part of responsive design. Learning it will really level you up. Though remember to always build the mobile version of a website first, then make the desktop version, otherwise you'll be like past noob me, and it takes a while to unlearn this bad habit of always building desktop first. Also, avoid using fixed widths, a huge beginner mistake when starting out. Only use it when absolutely necessary. Absolute positioning is one of the big reasons people get annoyed with front end, but putting some real time into this and mastering it will save you huge amounts of frustration in the future. Learning to place something absolutely center is a real skill at first. Now, Flexbox is the core of how styling on the web is written at the moment, and will be the go-to core CSS you'll be doing in your job. You can use CSS Grid, which is a better layout technique, but it has poor IE11 support. Anything you do, you have to consider other older browsers first. And lastly, again, make sure you style everything with mobile first in mind. Super important to always consider that. Learn mobile first design and burn it into your memory. Let's jump into the scary, not actually so scary, world of JavaScript. Be under no illusion, long term this can be a challenge to learn for someone completely new to programming. There's a lot of concepts that come at you when you're starting to learn a language like JavaScript, though don't be afraid. If past noob me could learn it, anybody can. I'd start with some basic projects you made yourself and just manipulate the web page. Make elements do interesting things when you click or hover over them. You can do all kinds of things with JavaScript, like add CSS styles to elements or just simply console log something out with a button. One thing to do that I learned later on is, as you're watching JavaScript tutorial videos, just practice the code in the browser console as you're learning. It really helps solidify your learning in the moment at the time, so you're not just passively watching something, you're actually actively learning as you're watching YouTube videos or courses elsewhere. Another huge turning point in my learning of JavaScript was to actually use comments in a JavaScript file to scaffold what I wanted my logic to do. Once I knew what I wanted my function or logic to do, I'd just go and Google each next step, learning as I went along, from MDM, which is Mozilla's repository for information, or W3 Schools, until I was able to create it all on my own. I would have used this technique much earlier on, and it really helped me learn JavaScript, and it really helped me break into the world of programming and understanding core concepts. And the main thing with JavaScript is just to avoid watching endless amounts of videos and being scared to actually code. Sometimes you need to take a break from tutorials and guides and just whip up a blank project to just code, or make sure you follow the second step and code along in the console in the browser as you're watching these videos. Now, a huge part of your learning are the resources you use. I learned using Codecademy because you're actually writing code. Similar to how I learned to touch type 20 years ago, practice is all that it takes. Simply writing code, learning the conventions and syntax makes a huge difference to your speed of learning going forward. Codecademy is perfect for that, and it's always the first resource I recommend to beginners regardless. Bonus feature, it's absolutely free. What's better than that? Treehouse is the next level after you've exhausted all your free options on Codecademy and you've got a basic handle on front-end web development with quite a bit of experience actually typing the code out in front of you. It has a high production value and really brings tough beginner concepts into light that helps you understand greatly. I've many good memories of Treehouse and learnt so much from this platform. Downside, it does have a monthly fee, but it's a small investment into how much money it will return on you when you get your first developer job. It also has a trial, which I would recommend to see if it's something that you'd get along with. I personally found it invaluable, and I'm sure the trial would be handy for yourself as well. I'll leave the link for that in the description. Now, there's many great YouTube channels out there, this one included. There is a lot of free content out there on the web, which I would have utilized more had I not been such a complete noob. Get on the tubes and soak up all that knowledge out there. By the way, subscribe to Curious Byte. Another great resource is just making your own damn mistakes. When I was going for interviews, I was forced to take these skills tests. I was actually terrible at just sitting down and spending time to code, and instead spent all my time forever learning, watching videos, never actually practicing. After each skill test, I got better and better each time, very noticeably. I saw the mistakes I made and vowed to improve them when I got refused the job because I interviewed well, but I didn't do the technical very well. Avoid that and practice way before your skills test. Practice, practice, practice on test projects. Make a website every day. Practice those concepts until you're absolutely solid on mobile first, Flexbox and responsive design. One of the big daddies of JavaScript courses is JavaScript 30 by Wes Bos. He teaches you how to make 30 JavaScript apps in 30 days. An amazing resource which helped me so much in powering through and forcing me to write JavaScript in a structured way. Can't recommend this enough as a learning step. Best part about it, it's absolutely free. Now the biggest bit of advice I'd give to pass me is to read the books. Do not avoid them. I always thought programming books were boring and couldn't possibly teach me what an entertaining video course could. I was so very wrong. My learning has now grown exponentially from reading books, but books are the secret glue to your learning. Bring many of your scattered concepts that you might have floating around in your head and bring them together. I'll be doing a video on the power of reading books for learning to code in the future, and I would definitely recommend you going to check that out. And that's really what I'd say to old noob past me. To avoid time wasting, use the damn tools and resources available to you and get to grips with those concepts, those fundamental concepts early on. If you're new to front-end web development, leave a comment down below letting us know how your learning is going and any questions you might have on what to learn next. You never know, I might make a video on it. Like and subscribe, and as always, stay curious.